Hey everyone, today I'm going to be swapping out this MS668 display / throttle with a different one that I purchased directly from Yunli, who is the manufacturer of the Sinewave controllers. So I'm going to be installing their own display and expect to get much better performance. Their display is called the DS20. So a little history first. The Ti-30, this Ti-30 anyway, originally came with these J&P controllers. First of all, they're square wave controllers, so the throttle response is very choppy. It's not smooth at all. It's like on or off kind of feeling. The other thing, it has a pretty major issue that I found, at least with my set, that at 60 volts, when I still had 60 volts left on my battery, which is the mid-range of the battery, so 50% battery roughly, I could not use dual motor mode. If I put it in dual motor mode and hit the throttle, it would kind of like stutter, like there's not enough power to run both motors. So I'd kick it back into single motor mode, and that was fine for a while. I could still, go 30, 35 miles an hour, but then after a while that started doing the same thing where it started like stuttering, like I was running out of battery voltage, and I wasn't. I still had, 58 volts left on my battery, and eventually it just got to the point where I couldn't go faster than 15 miles an hour because of that. Of course, it was the controllers doing that. So these just aren't very good controllers. I did buy a replacement set from a company called Yunli, and their Sinewave controllers, I already have installed those in a previous video, and they're nice and smooth, a lot smoother. So however, I bought the set from Banggood online, and they paired it up with a throttle called the MS668. This just is not a very good throttle. It has a lag to it. So like if you're cruising at a certain speed and you let off the throttle, it takes a second and a half for it to respond and start slowing down. Because of that, you can't just, like sometimes you want to go slow and just like bump your throttle a little bit to slowly, bump forward. You cannot do that because it senses you hit the throttle, and then it gives you, even if you're just doing it real quick like that, it gives you about a second, at least a second of really hard throttle. So you just kind of lunge forward. Anyway, so the company Yunli that makes these Sinewave controllers have now just come out with, and it's not even fully released, a display throttle of their own. So I figured, and it's supposed to not have any lag, it's supposed to be very precise, and why not use their throttle with their controllers? That should be the best scenario. So I expect this to go rather well and get good results here. So it came with basically the throttle and the electronics in it. It's a 5-pin connection. I guess they're going to eventually come out with a 6-pin one as well. They also give you, this is nice, they give you a spare case with the throttle handle already in it. So if you were to break this one, drop the scooter or something, break off your handle, you could just unscrew it, take the electronics out, and mount it in this new case. So that's really nice. And of course you get a cable with it, 5-pin cable, and also a manual there. You also get a mounting piece for your handlebars and the hardware associated with that. I don't really even need this. I'm just going to mount this to the one that I already have on the handlebars. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the MS668 throttle. Now when I installed this, I didn't run the cable through the chassis or through the stem. I just kind of wrapped it around the outside here. Because I was just testing with this. I figured I'd be changing it like I'm going to anyway. And I'm just going to remove these top 2 screws and pull this piece off, the whole throttle. Okay, so got that off. Next thing I'm going to do is remove this cable that I had used it, and again it's just wrapped around the outside and plugged down there. So I have the old cable disconnected that went to the MS668. Next thing I want to do is deal with the original throttle that came with the JP controllers. There wasn't a plug on this, so I just kind of set it over here and wrapped it up, tied it up good to get it out of the way while I was testing the other one. But I need to remove that now. I got that old display off and just kind of hanging there. The cable goes into this cable sheathing, down through here, and then down through the stem, and comes out to the cable sheathing there. Ends up in the chassis. And on the end of the chassis, it goes to 2 3-pin male connectors, green, blue, yellow, and red, orange, black. I need to remove this old cable and instead replace it with this 5-pin cable, which I'm going to want to run down through the stem. My new cable, 5-pin cable, and you can see it has the red blue, black on one side, green and yellow on the other. Rather than pulling it up to the stem, I need to pull it down to the stem because the side I need to go on top has the plug on it, and I can't remove the plug from this cable, and it would be harder to pull that plug through there, through the stem, than to just pull the other end. This side I can remove these black plastic plugs. To remove these plugs, remove the pins from these plugs, if you look on this side here, the end closest to my fingers, there's a little tab that's sticking up right at the end of the plastic there where it meets the plastic. So what you need to do is take some sort of a tool, a poker tool like that, or even like an X-Acto blade, and push down on the tab while you pull back on the wire, pulling it out the back. Once you get the tab low enough, the whole pin and everything will pull back out of the connector. Okay, I got the 2-pin side off, and now I'm going to remove the other one. Okay, got both of them off, and now I can just twist the wires a little bit like that. So what I'm going to do now is just cut this cable right here, cutting the display off because I need to pull this cable back down this way. I cut the old throttle off. There's the end of the cable going up and then down to the stem. So I want to take my new cable that I took the connectors off of and secure that somewhat like this. Alright, so here's the old cable on the left, here's the new one on the right, and I ran it up about that far and duct taped them together. I'm going to bend the other wires down over like this and duct tape it some more. Okay, this is what I ended up with. New cable, old cable. Try to secure them, get together good. Pressing this tape in as much as possible, trying to make it as thin as possible. And now I'm going to try to feed this, pull it from the bottom, and see if I can get this new cable to go down through the stem. Okay, so this is going to be the hardest part here. If I can get past this, then it should go through. And that's getting my widest part here with all my tape and stuff down into the initial opening there. It is pretty tight, so I need to try and manipulate these wires, move them around while pushing down on this. I don't want to pull too hard on the bottom and tear the cables apart from each other. So I want to try to push more from the top, move the wires around, see if I can manipulate to get this biggest part here over into the stem. So I took a small flathead screwdriver because I think the problem was my tape was overflowing over the edge of the hole there. So I just went up against the side here, not poking it, but just using the flat part to like push the tape in around the edges there. And I think now I can get it past that hole and into the stem. Okay, so after using that screwdriver to push the tape in, I was able to pretty easily push this in. So there's just the end of the tape. So I'm past the hard point there. Okay, so that went pretty easy. Once I got past that initial opening, it went very easily. There was plenty of room in there to do this. As you can see now, it's coming out the bottom side here. And there we go. Before putting these pins back in, you want to make sure that that tab is bent back out on top, the one that we pushed in to pull the wires out. So you can see on the green wire here, for example, on the top side there's that tab that's sticking up. That's the one that we pushed down when we pulled the wire back out. So you want to make sure that's sticking back up, so when you push this back into the connector, that tab can lock into place so it can't back out anymore. I again just use a X-Acto knife. That's how I do it. So now I got those tabs pulled up on all the wires. I can simply just insert them back into the plastic connector in the proper positioning. To determine the wire coloring positioning, I'm just going to go by the other ends that it's plugging onto, coming from the controller, from the cable harness there. We'll start with the 2-pin one, like I said. So I've slid the female connector onto the male connector there, so I now can tell that the green wire will need to go in that top hole and the yellow wire will need to go into the bottom there. So I got the green wire in, and once you push it in, you should hear that pin lock in place, and then you should be able to hold the black part of the connector, pull back on the wire, and make sure that the wire is indeed locked in and doesn't come back out. Okay, here's the other one, the yellow one. By the way, on the connector, you can see on the top side there's a little indentation where the bottom is flat, goes straight across. That little opening, that little extra opening on top, that's the side the pin goes to. So you slide it in that way with the locking pin facing the top there. Okay, I got all my pins back in my connectors and plugged them back together, and just before you turn anything on, you want to make sure, double check that the green goes through the connector to green on the other side. The white goes to the connector to the yellow on the other side. The red goes to the connector to the red, blue goes to blue, and black goes to black. So this is one thing to note too. If you previously had the MS668 cable already pulled down through your chassis and you're thinking about using that same cable, because on this end the pinouts look the same with the black, red, and blue on the one side and the green and yellow on the other. This side looks the same between the MS668 cable and the DS20 cable. However, there's something different on the other end because I tried plugging the MS668 to my DS20 cable and I got an error code 10, which is a communication error between the throttle and the controllers. So now I've plugged my DS20 controller on, my DS20 throttle, and it works fine. So that means there is something different on this end going into the throttle part where you can't use MS668 cable with the DS20 and vice versa. Okay, so I have the DS20 plugged on now, and let's go ahead and power it up. I like this. I really like this. It's an LCD screen. It shows your voltage down there on the bottom, 57 volts, your miles per hour, different ride levels, I guess. I'm going to have to go through the manual and the P settings and figure all this stuff out. The issue with the lag is gone. So I can now just take and bump my throttle a little bit, like if I want to just inch forward, and I can do it. It doesn't give me a full burst of throttle for a second and a half. I can actually quite slowly, I can make the wheels go quite slowly just by using throttle. I need to just run my wiring and then slide this back up under my mount here like that and secure it with 2 screws. Alright, so I'll be doing another video here really quick, guys, after I get everything put back in the chassis and set the P settings and go through that and do a little testing. I'll have another video out on the P settings and what I think of this throttle. So far I really like it. Till then, guys, take care, peace, ride safe.